Happy Friday, Mike Larson, Allen Realtors, here to talk everything real estate. You know, I almost feel like I should have a baseball cap on today because people ask me a lot, can you walk me through what a typical transaction looks like, either from a buyer's standpoint or a seller's standpoint? And I use a baseball analogy to help them understand the steps and the processes and the things that happen in a typical transaction. And so before a buyer starts to look at homes and before a seller puts a sign up and actively is trying to sell their home, they are in, I guess you could say, the batter's box. I mean, they are up to bat. And once a buyer and seller agree on price and terms for the sale or for the purchase of a property, they are at what's called mutual acceptance. And mutual acceptance is a place that I'm going to call first base in a transaction, or a time that I would call first base in a transaction. So the price, of course, has been determined, the contingencies, the deadlines, the things that comprise the typical transaction, the earnest money amount, whether there's going to be an inspection, how many days they have to do the inspection, et cetera, et cetera. So first base is that mutual acceptance. Well, at that point, most of what happens falls on the buyer. The buyer almost always, gets right into their inspection, and the inspection is actually second base. So buyer does their inspection, and they either say, it's great, we accept it, or they say, we disapprove it and move on, or they say, we accept it, however, we want the seller to correct some defects or some things that our inspector found wrong with the property. And, once that negotiation between the buyer and the seller has been resolved, and they agree on what's going to happen, then you're at second base. The inspection has been resolved. Your first base is mutual acceptance. Second base is the inspection. And then they move on. The buyer moves on to third base, which is the appraisal. The appraisal is an important process. It is the independent third party that the buyer's lender requires before they give that buyer a loan. And a lot of people say the best indicator of fair market value is what a buyer and a seller both agree on. And that's what's happened in mutual acceptance. But sometimes buyers pay too much, or sometimes there are issues with the property that the appraiser is going to weigh in on. So obviously the appraiser is going to determine value, but they're also going to call out things that are almost always related to safety and soundness to deal with the property. So mutual acceptance, first base; inspection, second base. Once the appraiser determines that the value is okay and that there are no conditions left to meet that value, then the appraisal is satisfied. That's getting to third base. And at that point, the buyer and their lender are getting things ready with the loan. They're finalizing all the stuff that has to take place. And the seller quite often is doing the work that came out of the inspection, also known as second base. So, usually after 30 or 40 days, the buyer has their cleats high in the air and they're sliding into home. And home plate is the closing table and closing day. So baseball has been important to me. It's a good way to describe what happens in a real estate transaction, and I hope it was helpful to you. So go Mariners. Call me if you have any questions, and have a great weekend. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.